So yeah, it's open out to whatever questions people get, whatever people want to talk about to do with World of Warcraft. I'll just sort of start off while people think of things to say. We'll just point out here, I had a live Rhett Q&A before. This little chappy, I suppose technically he can be there or not. This is general World of Warcraft sort of discussion though, so I'll keep it there broad. And I was just thinking, I'm just working on a video at the moment that's going to be coming out after this, on thinking about the future, in particular thinking about something for the next expansion. And I was thinking to myself, with 7.2.5, there was so much that I should have been able to do and didn't, largely because when I made two mistakes really. The first of which is that when I was trying things out on the PTR, when it was first, it's like Blizzard said, oh, this is like the Trial of Style and the Auction House Dance Party. Oh, this is on now. So I would usually find some time to go on and have a go at it without recording it, largely because with the old computer, like I would have fraps on the automatic startup. I've got several things to record gameplay, including this, including Gamecaster, but fraps is my preferred one for just recording just general gameplay. And it would just, on the startup, so all I had to do was hit F9 and it would just start recording whatever. But with the new computer, I'm blaming Windows 10 for this. With the new computer, which has Windows 10 on it, it won't do that. It does load fraps up. In theory, it's like, you can see it on the taskbar, but it's not actually there. Hi, confused. It's not actually genuinely there. So if I press F9, it won't record anything. I have to close it down and then open it up again to get it to actually bloody well work. So I stopped having it just automatically load up now. The end result of which being that I often find myself in situations where I go, okay, I'd like to record this, and I have nothing. So I'd have to open something up and I just can't be bothered. So what I was doing when I was going to the PTR, I was going for a quick look really. I'll have a quick go at it, see what it's like. And then, I'm going out of focus. Well, there we go. And then I would intend to come on at the weekend, say, to get the proper footage. But unbeknownst to me, I wasn't really used to this. It wouldn't be there at the weekend. They wouldn't necessarily keep some of the pieces of content on for that long, so I'd have missed it. So I think for 7.3, I need to be aware of that. I need to make sure that when I'm doing stuff in there, I do record it. Because when I was talking about some stuff for the 7.2.5, I realised I had like no footage at all. Whereas for 7.2, I did. Because I had the older computer then, it was fine. So so I am definitely going to have a think about that. But what I was thinking about, this is a video I've got coming up after this, see what you think about this. I was thinking that the last couple of expansions, Legion and Warlords of Draenor, we've had as a very prominent guide, and it makes no difference whether you're Horde or Alliance, because I've done both WoD and Legion as Horde and Alliance. That Outraid, only 7 people showed up. We did an outraid yesterday, and annoyingly, we were doing it as a trial run to see if it's worth us to, like, split runs are a good thing to do. Like, ideally we would do it, but in our guild we don't, like, we do 3 days a week. We don't insist on people having alts. That's, you know, it's a draw in some ways. But given that a significant number of people seem to have suitable alts, then we were thinking, well, is it worth doing a few splits? First of all, a warrior was suggesting it for Infernal Cinders just off the first boss. But then you start to get to think to yourself, well, if we could do it for a few bosses at least, then that opens itself up to even getting a few extra pieces of tier. So we did one as a trial run yesterday, but then some arse got a buyer to do a Nighthold Heroic on the bloody night we'd chosen. So some of the better alts had already done it and saved themselves by that. So although we did it yesterday, we had numbers, and you know, we wiped once on Gul'dan, and that was bad. But other than that, it was fine. But it was just, yeah, we wanted to actually see what our alts were really like, to see if it's worth it. So I think we are probably going to give it a little go. We've got another week to sort of think about it. But what we might do is put on an optional raid as well, just to make sure that, so that we can spend a little bit longer on the splits, give it a bit more of a chance. Because if we can do more of the bosses, then more tier gear, more trinkets as well, I suppose, when it comes to it, and all to the better. Because you give yourself such an advantage or a disadvantage, I suppose, depending on your point of view, whether or not you do split runs. Because for some, I mean, where's this list? I don't know whether this is accurate or not, of course, but this is what's been bandied about for the... this isn't a relative bonus, by the way, for the tier 20 for different specs, because it doesn't take into account replacing tier 19. Hi, Jack. Well, we don't normally do any... We didn't do any splits in Nighthold, for example. We're not the sort of guild that does that. But if we could even do a little bit of a split, then that could potentially be helpful. But it does require, of course, because we haven't done any practice on PTR or anything like that, it does require that we know what we're doing and we don't mess about, we don't have DPS whores, and we do the tactics properly as we understand them, because, of course, we're using second, third-hand tactics, not ones we've looked at ourselves, because we haven't tried them ourselves. We'll be doing it for the first time next Wednesday. But we look at this, yeah. I mean, some of them are looking like they're going to get a massive boost out of it. Shadow Priest there. Arms, well, we don't have any arms wearing anymore. They're going Fury. But even that's decent. Marksman, except our Hunters are now Beastmaster. Which is possibly a good thing, actually. Feral, like for Vanquisher, our Feral Druids, I think it's safe to say, got to be getting our Vanquisher tier first. Well, mine's BM. I have a Hunter BM simply because I don't really... It's quite low priority. I quite like playing alts, but then it's like at any one time I'm thinking, you know, what can I do? And I can do stuff for... Actually, recruitment's looking quite good at the moment. We're not desperate for anything. It'd be quite nice to have a top draw Hunter, but we're not desperate for anything. But through Nighthold, it was never the case that I was able to sit back and go, recruitment's done. I don't know about that, but I don't know anything about anything. All I know from my Hunter, right, is that the other Hunters in the guild hate me. Because when I first leveled my Hunter up, Wigglebow, I was Marksman, and I straight away got the boots, which apparently were Biss, and at least one Hunter in my guild didn't have them. But the thing is, although I got the Marksman one, I very quick soon after that decided to play BM instead. Because if you're going to play it now and then, like, you know, you drop it for a few weeks and then pick it up to do a couple of things and back again, it's a lot easier to pick up BM and play it to a basic level. I'm not saying great, but a basic level than it is for Marksman. So I went Marksman. And then the second legendary I got was the Helm, so that's no use either. So I was going around wearing Marksman boots as BM just because of item level and the Helm. And then last week I got the shoulders in the alt raid. Not the alt raid, a heroic raid for the mains. But because it's on my second account, I just have it tag along on follow. It doesn't do any damage or anything. It just hoovers up loot. And so he got the shoulders, which I was also told were pretty much Biss, or at least one of them. And again, would you believe it? The Hunter who was not liking me particularly for getting those boots, who was Marksman at the time, is now BM herself, and she hasn't got the shoulders either. So it's like my alts get all the shiny stuff. In fact, that's actually the same. That's the Hunter that got a Convergence of Fates twice in 1 week, actually, before my Paladin, long before my Paladin ever did, and an 875, I think, Arcano Crystal, which is what I'm still using. But yeah. What was I talking about? Well, it is sometimes. I noticed this in vanilla. I had my very first alt in vanilla in terms of leveling up. Like in vanilla, obviously I leveled up my Paladin. And then I used to keep rolling alts, but never getting up to level cap. I would delete them because there was something about them I didn't like. And it would just, sometimes it would just be what they looked like. But there'd be something I didn't like and I'd just leave them or delete them. So the only one I got to level 60 other than a Paladin in vanilla was my Mage. And the only reason for that I put it down to was the fact that it leveled up so quickly. It was level 60 before I knew what was going on. And it was like, okay, so I've now got a level 60. Yes, Action Man, this is allegedly the DPS benefit of the different set bonuses. However, again, you have to be very careful into this. First of all, we don't know what it's based. If it's based on dodgy sims, then, you know, and the other thing is, it doesn't take into account what you might be sacrificing. So let's say it would have to replace some tier 19, and your tier 19 set is actually pretty good. It doesn't give that percentage, because how can it? Because some people will be able to wear 2-piece plus 4-piece and stuff like that. So, you know, but at the same time, you have to have, especially, you know, loot council. We use loot councils. Loot councils are so like predominant in terms of loot distribution these days that you sort of need something objective. So we are likely to be basing it strongly on this, because there needs to be something objective. You don't just want to give it to people because you think a bit dodgy. So if you're going from something like this, even if people don't necessarily agree with it, they can at least go, okay, well, it's at least objective. So this is what it's alleged. So the big winners from the tier 20 look to be at the moment. But the other thing is, I don't know. Someone just linked it. If you go into your Discord, someone just ask for it in any class Discord. I bet someone will throw it out, because it's doing the rounds. It's been doing the rounds for the past few days, and it's the same one whenever I've seen it as well. But I forgot what I was saying now. No, never mind. Oh yeah, so big winners from it allegedly, we'll look at this, would be feral druids, marksman hunters, arms warriors, shadow priests. Look to be the real big. But the thing, oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, Blizzard have just posted today to say, by the way, there's still a load of tuning going on. I mean, we could sort of work some of it out, because they're bringing out the patch a week before the new raid. There's no reason to do that other than they want to see people do farm on Nighthold, get lots and lots of data on the class balance basically, and rework some things. So they've, oh yeah, I suppose it would, yeah, inevitably Reddit would have something like this on. It would inevitably change this in the next week, because Blizzard are bound to make changes. They will also then make changes after the first week of Tomb of Sargeras, after the second week of Tomb of Sargeras. After that, it'll probably settle down a bit, but they've also shown that they will tweak things now and then as well, even in the middle of a tier. But they have sort of said they don't want to make, they have gone on record as saying in Legion, they don't want to make major changes to the way classes work mid-tier. So, hi gamer. So that's what they want. Patch day, no add-on work. Update them. Or is even that not working? Lag is inevitable, I suppose, on patch day. I mean, that's, I suppose, another good thing of have. Mind you, it'll make no difference, will it? Even, you know, I was going to say having patch day a week before the new raid, but then the new raid will come out and people will be jamming in. You know, then the instance servers will all be overloaded as well. No updates. Well, there's one little hot fix that I saw them announce, and that is, and thanks very much Blizzard for, you know, I did a video a couple of days ago and now it's wrong because you've just changed something at the last minute. That crafted gear, instead of having a cap of 885, if I understood the tweet correctly, will have a cap of 900. That's a little hotfix they've put in. No, it's not going to be a great idea to go by this spreadsheet at all. I'm absolutely certain of that, because I mean, it's except for the fact it's objective, but like I don't trust the Sims in the first place. Like, not every, I mean, some, but in terms of comparing classes, the second point, as I've already mentioned, I should do a video on this actually, shouldn't I? The second, I already did one technically. The second point, as I say, is it doesn't take into account how much of a percentage upgrade it is if you are replacing what might be good tier 19 bonuses. And the third thing is Blizzard are actively tuning right now. You know, they are going to make major changes. You know, and we know that, as I say, not only have they brought this out a week before the raid, that's the only reason they'd bring it out. They've actually gone and said, look, you know, stuff's going to change. Mastery make a comeback. What, for us? What, for Rhett, do you mean? I wouldn't count on it. Let me have a... Oh, hold on. I don't know if I go clicking off on things, if it's going to do something to the stream, so I better not muck about with it. So, but I did a plot, a stats plot, that was still showing master. Because I was thinking, because there was a time like a week or two ago, and I was doing Sims, and I was thinking, yeah, haste mastery could be a thing. You know, getting plenty of mastery looks quite good with certain There's a particular combination of legendaries and talents and stuff where having high mastery could be pretty bloody good. But by and large, mastery is still lagging a little bit behind. Let's have a look. Astus tweeted you and asked about the back legendary becoming the best. Can get with the tier 20 set. Not necessarily. It can be, and it sort of depends. There's pros and cons now for single target, that is, which is going to be most of the time, which is a bit disappointing. There's going to be 4 legendaries, all of which you could possibly class as best, depends on circumstances. And that's the belt, the cloak, Liadrin's Fury Unleashed, and Soul of the High Lord. So the 2 DPS rings. Actually, technically, Sephir's Secret can be as well, as long as you're able to basically, as much as possible, use interrupts and crowd control, stuff like that. But that's not realistic on a boss. So you could use the cloak and the belt, and that would be fine. You could use the belt and Liadrin's Fury Unleashed, and that would be fine. You could use the cloak and Liadrin's Fury Unleashed, and that would be fine too. You know, any of those would be fine. And then with Divine Purpose, especially at high haste levels, which may be difficult to obtain to begin with the cloak, that could be good as well. So they're all so close together, and that's when you sim them. Obviously, in the fight, that's when you have to think about what increases and decreases the value of certain legendaries. So I'm not going to talk about Ret too much, but very quickly. So with the belt and the Liadrin's Fury Unleashed, they both affect when we've got our DPS cooldowns going on. So if you get to use your DPS cooldowns optimally, then they're good. Especially when you've got lots of relics that extend the duration of it. Whereas if you don't have the relics that extend the duration of it, and you constantly having to move during those periods, so you don't get the best use out of it anyway, then they're devalued. And that can apply to any legendary. For any class, you have to sort of think to yourself, you've got a few legendaries that are not clear, but it's like they're under certain circumstances. You have to think about what the legendary does, which like ability it buffs or changes or whatever, and think to yourself what conditions allow you to optimally use that ability and which conditions act against using that ability, and think on a particular fight which it is, rather than just go by a sim, which is telling you that they're all the same value on every single fight, which they're not. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, that was the thing. But then the other thing about reason why we shouldn't look at stuff, like if we look at this one, for example, people have been looking at this. I did a video on this last week, not to pay any attention to that. So you can get some people who look at that straight away and they'll go, oh my God, like Shadow Priest, Windwalkers and Rets and all these are really hopeless. Oh my God, nerf Outlaw. But then you can look at another one like this, and it's not photoshopped, it's simmed, but you know, there is something wrong with that one. But even the other ones, which haven't been fiddled, are still in a different order to that one. You know, I know that's DPS variance percentage rather than damage per second, but again, it just sort of shows you how just something wrong in it. Someone does something wrong or uses something that you wouldn't actually do in a fight, and it could actually come out with a sim that's lower or higher than it really should be. Which is why Blizzard, I mean, sometimes Blizzard annoy me when they ignore like good theory crafters in terms of what they're saying, or even good players who understand things empirically. But they do also have a point that, you know, sims are not necessarily 100% accurate, especially when everything's in flux. They're fine usually once it's settled down, because there's plenty more testing to go into it and they've worked out exactly what they need to do. Whereas when Blizzard keep changing things, they may not notice a change, for example. There was a situation where, I remember Hellfire Citadel, there was a point during that tier where they basically buffed several classes, including mine, including Ret, and they said, okay, all of these abilities, not all of our abilities, but these abilities being buffed by whatever percentage. And then someone noticed, and it was over a month later, in fact it might have been 2 months later, someone noticed that one of them hadn't actually been buffed at all. We just assumed it had, people updated the Sims and blah, 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 blah. And no one had actually noticed that it hadn't been buffed at all. But by which time the tier was basically over, Legion was coming, no one cared. But yeah, that was the other thing I was going to talk about. So what I'm talking about in this video that I've just been doing before I started this, but I need to finish off afterward. I've done the narration and everything, I just need to put some images on it. So we've got Khadgar at the moment, who is our guide. He's the one who takes us through all the major quest lines in Legion. And he did in WoD as well. And I was thinking, because he's the same person in both, that's the first time we've had one such prominent NPC in like 2 expansions like this. And I was thinking, well, maybe the reason for that is because they've done WoD and Legion in parallel. Because they could have done Legion first. They were and ahhing. You know, reputedly the decision was based on bringing out WoD to tie in with the film. Hiya. But I thought Jaina was the Dreadlord. So yeah, the film was delayed for a year, so it ended up not coming out when WoD came out, so whatever. But yeah, we've had Khadgar for all this time, and I was thinking, well, who we're going to get for the... If they do the same sort of thing, where they have one character that basically is our main point of contact for all the major quest lines, who they're going to have, because I don't think they should have Khadgar again, because otherwise it becomes a precedent, and then people who've, you know, only just started playing the game in the last couple of years, let's say since WoD, they just assume he's the main guy in WoW, which he's not. He's a major lore character, but he's not the main guy. But we'd get that impression easily if you'd only started playing the game from WoD onwards. So I think they'll choose someone else. And I was wondering, basically I went on for a few minutes talking about previous expansions, but the main point of it was, I was wondering, given that the next expansion is strongly reputed to be Old Gods, we don't know that, but it's heavily, heavily rumoured to be an Old Gods type expansion. If maybe, as our main guide, we get either a dragon aspect, which could be Kalakgos, or I was thinking maybe a keeper in the form of Raden, because, you know, he disappeared. He basically told us there was some coming darkness, which may or may not be the Legion invading right now, but it might not be, because how could he have foreseen that? He knew of a coming darkness. How could he have foreseen the Legion coming? He knew it would come at some point. I think much more likely something already on Azeroth, i.e. Old Gods related, because Mop was sort of semi-Old Gods related as well. So I wouldn't mind if he came back now and decided to be our main guide through those ones. I was just wondering what people thought about that. You think you saw something interesting in the Kill Jaden fight? There are a couple of... What's happened there? There are a couple of interesting things. Well, Rathian, yeah. Rathian, of course, should come back at some point. And he could well do it again. I mean, he's done it in Mop. And he's only made cameos since then. He made a bit of a cameo in WoD. He was sort of there in Legion, in the Alpha, because that Ebonhorn, when he reveals himself to be a black dragon, in Alpha when we were doing that quest, it was Rathian, basically. But then, obviously, it's not anymore. Has he still made an appearance in Legion, though? I don't know. Maybe, I can't remember. But he was there in the Alpha, but they've obviously removed him there since. So it could be. But even that, I think, risks sort of precedent. Like, I think he should come back, but not necessarily as our guide again. Well, this is the thing. If it is an Old Gods expansion, it's not likely to be a single Old God. It's much more likely to be a combination. Not necessarily of all the remaining ones, but it could be. You see, Illidan and Velen are fighting on the spaceship with some demons, but no Khadgar. Ah, well, you don't know what's going to happen with the Mythic one, because obviously we won't have seen any special Mythic shenanigans. But no, I hadn't actually seen that. That's... When he said Illidan and Velen fight, I thought he meant each other then, but no, okay. Fighting some demons. The Tauran still says he needs to go to family business. Yeah, well, Rathian's sort of always going to be there, isn't he? At the moment, I feel that Rathian and Jaina are a bit like unfinished stories. There's quite a few unfinished stories now, actually, in World of Warcraft that never seem to get tidied up. And that's fine. I didn't do much of the Chromie scenario, that's the problem. Again, it was one of those things. I did a little bit of it, tried it out, and then just run out of time. Queen Ashara... again, well, there's several things they could do for an expansion, as I say. The only reason I say old gods, it's not because I'm thinking to myself there's nothing else they can do. It is an actual rumour sort of based on something that has some credibility. Obviously, until Blizzard tell us what it is, we don't know. It's all just rumour. So they could do a Naga-related one with Queen Ashara. I'm not sure that I'd be... I didn't actually like the underwater bit in... what's it called now? When they did that in Cataclysm. Oh, I've forgotten the name of the place now. Vashir. But at some point they will. They know people would want to see a Queen Ashara related thing. I mean, you could combine them. Anything can be combined with old gods. You could although I think Queen Ashara fits better with like Legion stuff. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. You can link, you can do both in the same thing, and it doesn't hurt as well to have like two threats, one major threat and a lesser one, because it breaks up the types of raids you can do. So you could have like an old godsy type raid, then a Naga type raid, and then another old gods type raid. Yeah. Well, yes, Nexog, that's quite possibly true. That's what I mean. But for me, it just, I don't know, it just seems to fit better that she would fit in with her Legion one more. Yeah, Arthas and Yogg Saron. Well, Yogg's, yeah. I mean, they do. They can appear anywhere. And you don't want every raid to be like old gods related, do you? You want something else. So it would be a good idea if it was twinned with another threat, even if it's a related one, like. And it would work, as I say, to break it up with what is essentially a Naga-based raid. You know, without any things with tentacles around the face. Just Naga. Well, some of those had tentacles around the face. But just Naga with Queen Ashara perhaps as the last boss. Because there's some lore characters you sort of don't want to kill. But there's some you don't care. Like Queen Ashara, you might as well kill her. She hasn't really done anything in World of Warcraft. She keeps popping her nose into places. But she doesn't really do anything. But I'm just trying to... I need to read my Warhammer BA, Warcraft Chronicles again. Maybe for this... well, plenty of time to think about that anyway. As I say, the earliest I guess we would find out would be BlizzCon. How many months? That's not that far away now, is it? A few months away. Maybe they'll have some news for us on that. I would hope so. As I say, I think the timings would work out fairly well if they announced the new expansion at BlizzCon. Well, the Lich King is back in some form, isn't he? He is back for the Death Knights. He's their guide. Can we discuss the nerfs on Demon Hunters? I'm not aware of any nerfs. I've stopped playing my Demon Hunter a while ago. I went off them. YouTube was tossing everything. Well, this is a good point. This is why I try not to stray too... I don't stray into speculation, like... Because, yeah, some people will just... They'll say 10 crazy things, right? This is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. One of them happens... Then they do a video saying, "Oh, I said this was going to happen. Look, there it is," and not draw attention to the 9 ludicrous things they said that just didn't happen at all. So you always have to be a little bit careful when you're speculating that you make it quite clear this is just speculation. I don't know anything. I'm not saying I think this is because of some scientific voodoo. This is just me making stuff up. Well, lore changes, of course, have happened many, many times, but the Warcraft Chronicles is the thing that's supposed to set it in stone. And the first one, Warcraft Chronicles, there's 2 out now, did cover old godsy type influence. So it's a while since I've read it, so I should probably read it again. I'm quite sure that, well, I know that the Naga, or at least I know that Queen Ashara and the old gods were covered in that. Not a fan of how they've handled Jaina post-war crimes. Well, again, there's several of these unfinished stories, aren't there? So you've got Jaina, which I feel is an unfinished story. Thrall is an unfinished... You know, they're just diminishing him more and more. It's ridiculous. Technically, even... oh, no. Forgetting names now. Zul'jin? No. Yes? The troll who used to be Horde boss. Forgotten. Is it Zul? Is it? The names have gone out of my head now. But he's got an unfinished story. And it was quite funny because one of the Blizzard guys actually said, oh yeah, this story is still to be finished. Which technically it is, because he said, when he... Vol'jin, that's it. Not Zul'jin. What am I thinking of with Zul'jin? Is that a troll place or something? Anyway, whatever. Vol'jin, thank you. I knew it didn't sound right. He said, when he was basically appointing Sylvanas as his replacement, which makes no sense, normally. That troll guy, yeah. He said, oh, you know, the spirits have given me clarity. As if he's like seen a vision where she has to be the one to lead the Horde. So you have to sort of wonder what that vision was. So that's technically an unfinished story. And then Blizzard did basically say that. They said, you know, it's an unfinished story. Then someone later on asked, I think it was for 7.2, are we going to see the conclusion of Vol'jin's story? To which... whoever it was, it might have been Ian, said, he's dead. He's dead. Which basically saying, you know, if there is a continuation of that story, you ain't going to find out about it in Legion. They've also basically said the same thing about Jaina. She has no more story in Legion. But she will pop up again. It's just that when she pops up again, is she going to have a proper story? Or is she just going to pop up, throw a strop, and bugger off again? Because we don't even know where she's gone, as far as I know. Zul'jin was in Zul'aman, thank you. Okay. All these troll names. We need a raid with the final boss being buzz off from him. I know we don't. But I am really curious about what the final raid is, or what the raid is going to be in Argus. Because this is the thing. We do know nothing about what's coming in Argus, other than there's a raid and new zones. And I guess what you were saying before about Velen and Illidan fighting on a Legion ship, I suppose that means that that's going to be our way to get to Argus. We're going to nick the Legion ships to get there, is my guess. Like, Draenei seem to know what they're doing with spaceships, so presumably they're going to pilot them. So I guess that's how we get to Argus. But what's going to be in the main raid? Because if Argus is the last raid, the last boss has to be someone of consequence. So I'm not really sure about that. No, it wouldn't make any sense. See, Sargeras, like, people keep talking about... In a vacuum, of course, people will say all sorts of things like Sargeras. Sargeras, as far as I know, is not... Well, first of all, he's huge anyway. But, okay, technically you had a story where Broxigar gave him a nasty nick, so is in theory fightable. But he's not on Argus. That being said, Velen did have that prophecy where Anduin leads an army of the light. But that was another thing that got me. So Velen had this prophecy where Anduin leads an army of the light into, like, whatever, to take the Legion head on. So in other words, presumably going through a portal to the Twisted Nether. But that got me thinking, because at the moment Turalyon is the general of the Army of the Light. So why not Turalyon leading it? Presumably means Turalyon's going to die, but that's what got me thinking, oh, is he just going to die? Or, so we've spent all this time never seeing Tyrallion in World of Warcraft, who is he must be the biggest lore character of the Azeroth races, let's say, like, aside from Sargeras. The biggest lore character who has not made an appearance in World of Warcraft. And so we're going to find him after all this time and then suddenly just dies. Or is he going to be a fell corrupted Tyrallion? Well, that's my issue, Rost. But it doesn't... Yeah. Again, it's got to be a boss that tops Kill Jaden. Absolutely. Now, I would be quite happy for them to do what they did in MoP and actually come up with new lore and create a new powerful boss for us. But they seem... After MoP, they seem to shy away from that. There's certain points in World of Warcraft where Blizzard seems to have taken a bloody nose. And even though I would say they're on the right lines... They've never gone back to it. Like in I wasn't around at the start of Cataclysm because I was taking a break, but I gather that the dungeons at the start were very tough. Like the level cap dungeons were really tough, but apparently there was a huge like backlash and people saying they were too hard and stuff like that. And then what did we get? The next dungeons that came out were really weak, and then the dungeons in MoP were pathetic, absolutely pathetic. And it's almost like they don't want to make the same mistake twice. And then in MoP they actually had genuinely new lore in it. You know, new bosses, new lore, new races, all the rest of it. I thought it was great. And then people were moaning like, oh, I've never heard of these guys. It's like, no, of course you haven't, because it's new. It's a new story. Did people in Warcraft 3 go, oh, I've never heard of Arthas. Who's this guy? No, they didn't. It baffles me, that sort. But Blizzard took that on board. And then what did we get with WoD? Oh, let's have every lore character that's ever existed. Oh, they're all dead. Never mind. Alternate reality and time travel. That's the way to do it. So, Medan, they still don't know how to deal with Medan. Medan sort of technically doesn't exist in the... Like, he's not appeared in World of Warcraft. It doesn't quite fit. But they're not saying he's not canon as such. They just don't know how to put him in the game. So until he's in the game, I treat him as not canon. But Blizzard have not said, or at least the most recent thing they said anyway, was that they don't really know how to feature him in. Because technically, he should be the Guardian, shouldn't he? Whereas he's clearly not in the game because, you know, like Khadgar was being tempted to become the new Guardian, wasn't he? So, hope there's a new way to get legendaries. They will change things. Like as an sorry, I'm missing some questions. As an expansion rolls on, the stuff that was time consuming to get earlier in the expansion, they are generally okay with not making it as awkward. Remember, the reason why they make some of these things difficult to get is so we spend more time on the game. Well, once you've got a point where like players who've been playing it since the start have already got the legendaries like that they want. Or most of them. So they have to come up with new content to keep us playing anyway. So there's no point in then just punitively making it harder for newer players or re-rollers and stuff like that. So they will ease up on things, as they already have. There's already been several times in Legion where they have done just that. Archimonde is supposed to be actually dead now. It was a little confusing, but I am pretty sure they confirmed that. The idea with the demon is, if you kill them in the Twisted Nether, they're dead. Now, Archimonde on Mythic, technically we killed him in the Twisted Nether. It got a little confusing, because then we suddenly appeared back on Draenor with a dead Archimonde corpse. So it was a little bit confusing. With him clearly still alive on the cutscene, throwing Gul'dan into the Twisted Nether. So it is weird. Because of the ending on Mythic Hellfire Citadel, it is a little ambiguous. But I am a little... Well, first of all, you can't... It's bad enough bringing a boss back twice, I think. But, you know, having a boss 3 times, like we've already done Archimonde twice in World of Warcraft. Do we really need to do him a 3rd time? But the other thing is, I am fairly sure, I can't swear to it, that they did sort of confirm, yeah, he's gone, he's out of the picture. Now, Kill Jaden wouldn't be, but they can't just bring him back for Argus. That's a bit. That's taking the piss. Well, this is what I was thinking about an Old Gods expansion. It would make sense for some of the keepers, and Raden would be a good one to start to get involved a bit more again. Like I'm also pretty sure that when we did Trial of Valor, correct me if I'm wrong here, that Odin said something about going to visit the keepers. Even though if you read the Chronicles book, they're probably not best pleased with him because he was an arrogant sod. What's the best way to earn legendaries after the first two? Do everything that can give you legendaries that you have time to do. Obviously, harder content gives you a better chance. One thing that gives you a really high chance that solo content is turning in war supplies. The war supplies and nether shards, actually. But with the nether shards, you have to be buying an item that's sort of in the same slot as the legendary you want. So that's not necessarily a great way to do it. But turning in war supplies is supposedly... I've never had a legendary from it. But then again, I've had very few legendaries to get. But allegedly, that is a pretty good way. Obviously, the emissary caches are not the highest chance, but you can do them every day. The weekly mythic cache has a chance as well, and that's supposed to be a decent chance. And then do raids on as many difficulties as you can. And obviously, Mythic Plus gives you a decent chance as well. But basically, any content... I mean, obviously, don't burn yourself out. But the more content you do, the quicker you'll get them. It's all there is to it. Again, you're going to have to say something on the Archimon one, because I am pretty sure that in a Q&A after Hellfire Citadel, they did sort of confirm that Archimon's gone. But I can't link you anything to it. But I'm pretty sure that's what they said. What are my thoughts on Blizzard saying the new legendary... I don't think they lied about them dropping the caches. There's no need for them to lie. I think they just cocked it up. But they did it last time as well. You know, they said this before. Like, we know they don't want us hoarding things for a patch. So they've tried to put something in place. But to be fair, it's probably quite complicated, some of these things they do. And I think they just got it wrong. So, yeah, people have been reporting getting the new legendaries from old... Like, people have been saving up emissary caches and stuff like that, for example. I forgot, so I've only got, like, the last couple of days' worth. But, yeah, people have been doing that. And some people, yes, have been getting the new legendaries. But I don't think they lied. I just think they thought they'd stopped it happening and hadn't. Because the other thing is, sometimes you see the different, like the different people working on it, like are not all in one massive team. It's lots of little teams. Like you hear this sometimes when you have a developer, like when Slootbag interviewed that guy, there were several questions he asked that the developer, it's not that he couldn't answer them because he wasn't allowed, he just didn't know. Even though it was technically the content he was working on, because the thing that was specifically being asked about was actually someone else's job and he just didn't know. So I think the same thing can happen. You know, you get, you know, a developer gets told, right, we don't want people hoarding, so we're going to make it so that the new legendaries can't drop from any emissary caches that they, you know, they got before the patch went live. So they go, okay, well, that's the deal then, but then it hasn't worked out. They haven't been able to do it or whatever. No, I'm not talking about hoarding the one from the weekly. I don't know. What I mean is emissary caches. You know, I got yesterday's and today's ready for tomorrow. I forgot. I should have been doing this for like the last week or two, and I forgot. So I don't have a load of them. Like some people have about 2 weeks worth. Do I think we're due another stat or item level ×2? Yes, I do. I think the next expansion we will have one. And I don't just mean that because I think we should have one. I'm pretty sure Blizzard suggested that we would be having one. So this is when Legion was still like Alpha. They did, or before Alpha even, they said that the next expansion wasn't going to get one, which is now Legion. But that there would have to be one. I would like a level squish. I think it must be very off-putting for new players of the game who've maybe played other RPGs, maybe even other MMOs, and are looking at the situation going, 110 levels? It's a level cap. I think it's very off-putting. And I don't know why, because with Cataclysm, they suddenly started... Was it Cataclysm? Where they suddenly started going up 5 levels? It went from 80 to 85, didn't it? The mob was 85 to 90. I don't know why they went back to 10 levels. There's no need for it. You know, if you want people to get a certain amount of experience to get to level cap, you just double the amount you need for each level, don't you? There was no reason for us to start suddenly going up 10 levels at a time again. It's huge numbers now. I really don't... There must be a reason. I'd be curious to know what it is, but it's terrible. I have been told, actually, that... And apparently this is the way it works in Night Owl, but I forgot. So there won't be any point in getting a plus 15 this reset, because it doesn't come into effect until Tumor Sargeras Mythic opens. I guess they don't want us getting high item level gear from dungeons before the Mythic race starts. So at the moment, until Mythic Tumor Sargeras opens, it's probably the case. Although maybe the week before, maybe next reset we get it. Because if it is available on Mythic, maybe we can still get it from the cache. I don't know. Lord of the Rings Online. Do you know what? I don't even know anymore. I haven't leveled in that for ages. Like, the problem is that game was not brilliant. I say brilliant. I like many features in it. That's why I have it. That's why I still have an account. But in terms of, it's dated. It looks and feels really old. And the irony is, it sort of looked and felt pretty old when it was new. I mean, I didn't play it when it was brand new. I played it like a couple of years after it came out, I think. But it always looks oldish and dated then. And it hasn't, the look and feel hasn't improved. Even though certain features may have been improved, I'm sure. But yeah. But I don't know about Lord of the Rings Online. It may well be. But Lord of the Rings Online must be existing now on about 100,000 subscribers or something. The level boot. Well, here's what I would do with like things like that, boosting services, and I think Blizzard should do. I know, like, it's too much to ask them to not, because they're going to make money from transfers, so they're still going to have transfers. No point arguing about that. I don't see why we shouldn't get, with our subscription, a certain amount of credit to use on the online store. So if you play for a certain amount of time, you actually get a free character transfer and stuff like that. That would be a lot better, because I think they might, and it's only me thinking, maybe they underestimate just how many people leave the game that wouldn't leave the game if they could transfer without paying a right load of money to sort of stay in a guild or something like that, because their guild collapses and they're on a small server or whatever. Warhammer Online, when that first came out, was terribly booked. Like, I got that because I was a big Warhammer player. So I got that pre-release, all the rest of it. You know, didn't play the beta though, because I was playing World of Warcraft at the time, right into it. Played that, and yeah, it was dreadful, and it was bugged to hell as well. Then when I stopped playing World of Warcraft after second Naxxramas, and I started playing a bit of Lord of the Rings Online, but also a bit of Warhammer Online, and I got into it a lot more because the PvP was pretty good, but the PvE was shocking. And there was bugs in it, and a lot of things didn't work. And yes, it was pretty badly put together. They were too ambitious. It was one of those classic cases of the people doing it too ambitious in terms of their resources. 15 is going to be harder now, certainly with the new patch for Mythic Dungeons, because the difficulty goes up by 10%, like in terms of damage they do and health that mobs have, by 10% rather than 8%. So if you do a plus 15 next week, it's going to feel a lot harder than it was last week. How much is a boost? Yeah, it's more than that. Oh, boost, sorry, 49 quid maybe. I'm going to say an actual transfer, if you've got to change faction as well, is more expensive than that now in the UK, which is the main thing. In fact, it's cheaper to boost a character than it is to transfer one. Again, if you need to change faction. Well, they've made the services more pricey, so they obviously feel that people are paying enough that they can get away with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't. It's an automated service. I'm not saying there's zero cost to it, because it's a service that had to be created and it has to be maintained. And Blizzard do say that they want a punitive aspect to it. They argue so people don't keep doing it. But I don't believe that, because when you've got a game like... You only have to look at other MMOs, big ones like Elder Scrolls Online. You don't transfer realms because it automatically puts you on a server with people in your party and stuff like that and friends. So there's, you know, that sharding technology sort of exists in World of Warcraft anyway. All they have to do is roll it out across the entire region. Like have an EU, there's no realms, there's just EU servers and North American servers and like, you know, Asian servers and whatever. So exactly, as long as they can get away with it, they will. And they are all clearly getting away with it. You would think it would be better for the number of... They would get more players playing, definitely. I'm not going to say they would make more money in the long run, because obviously that's not true. I'm quite sure their marketing people are not fools. But there would be more people playing. And you wouldn't have guilds collapsing. And every time a guild collapses as well, you always get some players who just stop playing. Because some of those players were playing because they either liked the guild or liked people playing it. And like one person stops playing, and then some people that enjoyed playing with them stop playing as well. So you always sort of get that with any guild collapse. But if guilds were able to more easily recruit, because there's always players that might want to join that guild, but you know, it's too expensive to transfer. Or they don't want to transfer because their friends are there or something like that. I mean, factions are a big enough barrier to that. But, you know, when you've got realm transfers as well, it's just a nightmare. Some tips for people that want to make some money in the new patch. Buy loads of chaos crystals. I've got loads of chaos crystals. I don't really sell my commodities on the auction house. And chaos crystals are very easy to come by. It's the blue enchanting crystals that are much harder to come by, because you don't really do heroics these days. And you can't break down chaos crystals into them. Buy or make food and feast and buy or farm transmog and sell it. Maybe. When a patch comes out, some things obviously do go up in price. How would I compare the first raid tier of Legion to WoD? The timings have been better. In WoD, there was a big... Even though we killed Imperator Margok in time to farm it for a few weeks before Blackrock Foundry came out, there were loads of good guilds that didn't. And because of that, some of those guilds, because they were into Blackrock Foundry, didn't kill Margok for ages. And that affects your world rank very, very badly. So I think it was better. I think they've got the timing better in Legion. They haven't rushed stuff out quite as much. What's this? Heroics drop epic level gear. Not from me, they don't. No, I get blue gear from Heroics. I don't do Heroics very often nowadays. I don't care about the AP, though. I suppose I still should, at least as tank, just to get some more augment runes. But then it's not. You don't always get a satchel as a tank. I'm not, you know, I'm not messing about just waiting for there to be a satchel. Am I excited for Tomb? I don't know. I was always more excited for the WoD ones, because during WoD, when I say blue heroic, I mean heroic dungeons, not raids. Oh, you mean they're epics now in 7.2.5? No, I did a heroic last week and got blue gear. Or maybe it's to do with the item level of your character, is it? I don't know. Weird. I did one last week. But anyway, all right, okay, fine. I'm now not sure. No, maybe I clicked the wrong one. I can't tell anymore. I've forgotten where I was. Yeah, so in WOD, the guild I was in, we used to do PTR tests and stuff like that. So I was always more excited then because I had a rough idea what I was going to do on those bosses. Now I don't, which makes me feel, even though I can watch Fat Boss videos and read Wowhead guides, a little unprepared. Because the problem with watching those videos and reading those guides is the ability to sort of get muddled in your head because you haven't actually practiced them. Do I think a third playable non-neutral faction would ever be possible in WoW? Easily. If they wanted to, they'd have to rejig the fate. Because think about Horde. They easily could have done this with Horde. With the Horde really are Orcs, Tauren and Darkspear Trolls. That's the Horde. If you think about the other races, the Scourge would just put with the Horde because they'd just come up with this two-faction idea. The Scourge, not the Scourge, sorry, the Forsaken, behave yourself. The Forsaken clearly couldn't join the Alliance. But it doesn't make any storyline sense for them to join the Horde either. Why would Horde trust them any more than the Alliance? They wouldn't. Now, you can argue militarily it gave them a tactical advantage because the Forsaken do give the Horde a military presence in the Eastern Kingdoms, which they wouldn't have had. So you can argue from that point of view. But there's no shared bonds of fellowship in the same way that those trolls... Because, you know, Thrall befriended the Darkspear Trolls and the Tauren. So they joined in with the Horde. You know, they've got that sort of fellowship thing going. The Forsaken don't. You know, the Blood Elves don't. The Blood Elves join them because, again, it's like, why not? That didn't even make sense. I mean, that would have made more sense to join the Alliance. They just needed another Horde race who to use. I don't know. Blood Elves. Why not? And then the Goblins again. It's just like there's no reason for them to join the Horde over the Alliance. It was just for the sake they wanted a Horde race. They make Goblins a Horde thingy. Why not? So there's no reason for Forsaken Goblins and Blood Elves. They're just in the Horde from a storyline point of view for the sake of convenience. There's no other reason for them to be in the Horde. I don't know, the Alliance was raced against Blood Elves. One guy, there was, in Warcraft 3, there was like that captain guy who was very rude to kill Jaden. But that was one guy, not the whole Alliance. But yeah, so the factions thing... Yeah, well, Pandaren, it obviously they had to have those join either. I mean, I wouldn't... See, I mean, I've said this before. I am opposed in MMOs to factions being a thing for PvE. For PvP, sure. But that's why I like it when a game totally separates PvP from PvE. Because it allows you, like Lord of the Rings Online, Elder Scrolls Online, there is no separation of factions for PvE stuff. So you can, you can have a friend at work or at school or something like that says, oh, I'm playing this game, it's really good, you should get it too. All right, I'll get it, and then I'll join your guild. And they can roll any race they like in those games and join their guild and play with them in PvE. Not PvP, because then they have to think about the faction. But in this game, you have to be very careful. Like, I may never have played World of Warcraft if the friend that suggested I get it was Horde. Because the question I asked him when he recommended it to me was, can you play a paladin? If his answer would have been, yes, you can, but not for Horde, which is what my hunter is, then it would have been, okay, well, I can't play with you, and I'm not playing if it's not a paladin, so I may not have, I only say may, I may never have got into it. Why do people keep finding cunning ways to say gnomes? Gnomes, well, it's not that gnomes had no reason to join the Alliance. It's that the Alliance had no business inviting gnomes to join them. But it would have made more sense if we had goblins. They're useful, at least. We could have had goblins right from the start. I think the only reason we got gnomes, if I'm totally honest, again, it would be nice to ask a developer from the time this, I strongly suspect the only reason we ever got gnomes is because for the Horde, they sort of had to have those 4 races. You had to have orcs, you had to have Tauren, you had to have trolls. Forsaken, okay, it don't make sense for them to be Horde, but you had to have them in, and you couldn't have them with the Alliance. So you straight away had 4 races for the Horde. So they had to have 4 races for the Alliance. And I think that's the only thing that caused it. The only other option would have been, aside from goblins, I guess elves, like not night elves, but like blood elves as we now call them, high elves, whatever you want to call them. But but then that's like having 2 elf races, which would have just been confusing. Well, we don't need your goblins. There are, just like trolls, there are multiple types of goblin. We can have different goblins. The good ones, the ones that sell the good gear. Not the ones that just blow up like a landmass into a rubbish horseshoe shape and then say, oh, yeah, we did that on purpose, by the way, because look, it looks a little bit like the Horde symbol now. Yay, go Horde. I don't remember. It's a long time since I've seen anything from vanilla. I remember vaguely looking at some stuff because I had no intention of playing World of Warcraft when it first came out. But I was a fan of Warcraft. It was just that I didn't like the idea of MMOs, so that's why I wasn't going to play it. But I took interest in like stuff that used to come out. It didn't even look... That's the other thing, actually. It didn't look interesting. When you saw like footage of gameplay and stuff, because I used to sort of follow it, really didn't look interesting. It looked rubbish, in fact. Goblins actually do have a sort of reason they joined the Horde, explained in the starting zone. Yeah, but they came up with that. They could have done another thing for the Alliance. Do I think they will add more class customization like Iron Dwarfs? I think that makes more sense than adding more races, in fact. I would like to see that their next big project on character customization is just that. Instead of just saying, let's think of a new stupid race to put in, let's have more character customization. Would be better. A lot better. I mean, some of them would be dead easy, because I was watching a video from someone recently. I've forgotten who now. And it was using footage from the Chinese World of Warcraft, where, for various cultural reasons, they're not allowed to have like bones and stuff on display. So obviously that's a bit of a problem for Forsaken, because you can't... So they had to rework all the models for like anything Scourge or Forsaken, or anything undead. So they already are new models that they could use. But I would actually just prefer proper customization, like you get in MMOs. Like proper detailed customization. But that would be too much to ask. But they should just increase, yeah, they should increase the range of options you have for the characters instead of just making new races. Do I try some... I've only played Diablo 3. I've never played any others. And I only played that because you got it free if you were going to buy that year pass, that annual pass, when they knew full well there was no new content coming out for a year. But I was fine with it anyway, because I'd come back to World of Warcraft at that point, and I sort of knew I was going to carry on with it for a bit. So I was fine with that. But yeah, I played Diablo 3 then. I didn't actually get into it at first. And then I played it quite a while after and played it through to the end then, but still don't really know much about the end game. I just played through the story on a few characters. It was all right for a bit of like distraction. They came up with that can apply to anything really. Well, it does. They come up with the most ridiculous, tenuous reasons for things happening in World of Warcraft. You know, they do it on a regular basis, and they just randomly retcon things. They go, okay, we didn't like that, we're just changing it. Bigger beards for dwarfs. Yeah, I would like some different beard options for dwarfs. You know, because I made a dwarf like so that at Christmas I can deck him out in his like Christmas gear to make him look like Santa Claus. But the beard's not quite right, if I'm honest. It's not quite right. I don't have a picture on this computer actually, otherwise I could show you. But yeah, I would be very much in favour of more customization of our actual characters. And yeah, that could allow you to have the different types of dwarf and even elves and stuff like that. Retcon was of the Draenei pre-TBC. I don't know. I mean, some stuff I'm not opposed to changing some things in a minor way to make it fit the new narrative better, but some of the things have just been changed for no good reason. And again, as I say, I don't think we need the number of races we have now. There's no real need for it. They could just, you know, what people want to do in an MMO in terms of their characters is they want the ability to customize them, to make them uniquely theirs. And the way you do that is by giving more options for more detail on them and player housing and more cosmetic gear as well. Not just transmog gear, cosmetic gear. So you can dress yourself up into different things, have suitable city transmogs and stuff like that. I'm not busy with the patch stuff videos now. I was at the weekend. Did I get... I saw... Yes, Simplemut, yes. I still haven't had a chance to look at it yet, though. But I did get that message. Yeah. But, yeah, I've sort of finished the 7.2.5 stuff for now. Obviously, the next stuff will be the stuff I haven't tried yet, which is the raiding. So, I'll have to... When we've done heroic for a week or two, I'll have to bring out some stuff for that as well. But I am always busy doing a video or something. Yeah, I did notice, yeah. Someone else sort of sent me stuff to do with an add-on as well, which I've forgotten the name of it. I downloaded the add-on, but I haven't tried that either yet. I always seem to be busy with something, which is quite nice at times. As I say, I don't like just sitting around with my feet up, but when it means you want to do something a bit extra, it's like, oh, what do you sort of knock on the head to be able to make time for that? But at the moment, yes, it's just we're just sort of waiting really to see what changes Blizzard do make, because people will be. I don't even want to necessarily go onto the forums at the moment to see what sort of fuss people are making about the different classes by, you know, chucking up those charts and things like that. Hybrid Night Elf Paladins, there's no need for that. There's no need for... There was no need for... like, we've got human paladins, dwarf paladins, there's like... Alright, fine, whatever. Draenei, okay, fine. But there's no need for anything else. If WoW allowed you to mix elements of different styles together... Hold on. I don't like the look of this. Something's telling me it wants to do a restart of the computer. This could be stunningly bad. I'd better deal with this now. What's it doing? Oh, okay. Hopefully it won't do anything. If everything goes black, it's done something without my say-so. I tried to change the time at which it could do it, but it was having none of it. Bloody Windows. Where was I? Oh, a stealth class, but also putting points to range weapons. No, they won't change anything about the core way the game works, I feel. There's some things that they might be open to change. Obviously, if you compare World of Warcraft now with, like, you know, 12 years ago. How late are you? Like 70 minutes. It's fine. It was started an hour and 10 minutes ago, but it's fine. We're still doing it. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, there's things that they are willing to change. There's things that they're probably not willing to change now, but maybe if a new developer moved jobs or something, that would change it. Like, I always feel player housing, apparently, and the only bad thing I can say about this guy was the fault of Chris Metzen, who really didn't like it, but now he's not there anymore. Maybe everyone else is in favour of it, and maybe, who knows, we get player housing. But excuse me. So yeah, I don't think we're going to get an Elder Scrolls type situation. They're not. See, if you think about it this way, they won't even let us customize the way we look properly. Because one thing I was like, talk about Lord of the Rings Online. One of the really great features of it, and I don't understand why I've never seen this in. Okay, I don't play loads and loads of MMOs. I tend to like play the big ones, but the one thing that it did a few things quite well, but one thing it did brilliantly was transmog. And like, I have my champion, which traditionally would be a heavy armor wearing character, and it does in terms of the armor it's equipped with. It's heavy armor, but I can have it equipped in like I have one transmog set, which is like a hooded cloak, so it's like a ranger type thing with a bow and stuff like that, and that's all fine. I could put him in a dress if I wanted. Whereas you don't get that with World of Warcraft. Like, there's no way of getting my paladin to look like he's actually in robes. And the Judgment set doesn't quite do it. I mean, like proper, you know, you couldn't dress it up to look like a priest, say. They seem to have an issue with that. I don't know whether they think it will confuse people in PvP. I don't know why. Because, of course, you can have class colour health bars and stuff like that. But they have an issue with that. They only allow us to transmog into gear that we could actually sensibly equip on that character. It allowed you to dye your gear, but another thing it allowed you to do as well is you could save multiple transmog sets. You didn't have to get onto a silly bloody mount either, a yak. Save multiple sets. So, like, what would happen is I'd be on my character. You could probably roleplay it. I'd be on my character going around, and if it was rainy weather, I would have my hooded cloak. And if it was, like, clearer weather, I would have a very similar transmog, but with just a cloak without the hood up. And then if I went up into the Misty Mountains or something, I had like an arc with furs and stuff like that I could wear, like, to keep myself warm. You know, and you could just click at the click of a button, you could just hit onto these different transmogs. You didn't, you know, I know you can save transmogs in this one, but you still have to go through multiple things. You have to go to someone who can do it, like get on your yak or something like that. Pay gold for it, which this didn't cost, and then find it in the options and change it and all the rest of it. So, hi, Atrilia. I mean, Elder Scrolls Online, I see everything. I've never played one better. Elder Scrolls Online lets you dye stuff as well. And it allows you to have the different sets. But it's not as customizable as Lord of the Rings Online. The Lord of the Rings Online is the best one I've seen. I'm not saying it's the best one, because there's plenty of MMOs that I either haven't played or haven't played enough to actually access that content. But in terms of the ones I have played, it is the best one I've seen. And it's the only thing that keeps me going back to it. Partly the fact it's in Tolkien's world, which is quite nice. And partly the fact that, yeah, you can properly customise that character. You can customise your character. You can customise your player house. The customisation options are actually very good. Which is a totally opposite to World of Warcraft. Love the seasonal events in WoW, but maybe it's nostalgia. Lord of the Rings festivals had something special about them. I don't know. Some of them were okay. The problem was they always seem to be the same every time they crop up each year. But some of them are quite good. But some of the ones in WoW are quite good. The problem with what they've done, like in Legion, it's quite clear that they've come up with these like ones that last 1 or 2 days as well. But I haven't done any of them, so they haven't really put anything in to compel me to want to do it. I'm not saying it should reward like gear or something, but if it at least rewarded something cosmetic. Duncan Jones on his birthday to Legendary that he wants from them Warcraft 2 on Twitter. Yeah, I do follow Duncan Jones. He always, if you see it all the time, if someone tweets him saying how much they've enjoyed Warcraft movie, he retweets it. I think he must do it every time, because I don't go more than 2 or 3 days without him retweeting some comment someone's tweeted him about Warcraft. He wants it. Mike Morheim apparently is well up for it. Every time he mentions it, I do tweet him back saying, I hope you're going to put Terralion in it, Because I can understand them not putting it in the first film. There were already a lot of characters in it. Possibly too many as it was. But there's room for him now. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what he would do with that. Obviously, it's massively divergent already from the official storyline. So it'd have to go in even... You couldn't possibly get it back on track. It'll have to go in an even more massively different direction. But that's fine. It was a good film. I liked it. Although I do hope they do a proper director's cut this time. Because some of the deleted scenes that I saw were amazing. They should have put all of them into the original film. If nothing else, at least an extended version. Which I don't think they did. Which was a terrible shame because I thought they were all great. But yeah, I mean, obviously, even if they made a decision now, it would be several years, wouldn't it? So I have to be patient on that one. Evening, Mystic Weaver, or aka Zach. No, I don't mean that we should be able to wear cloth. I mean we should be able to look like we're wearing cloth, like transmog. Obviously, we should be wearing plate armor, but I just think that we should be able to customize our look as we wish. Do you think a Bard class could work in WoW? The problem with the Bard class is it's a classic, just like in Dungeons and Dragons with Paladins, a classic support class, and World of Warcraft doesn't really, people keep using the word, but it doesn't really have support classes. Lord of the Rings Online did, again coming back to that, but it doesn't have it in World of Warcraft. The other problem with the Bard is it tends to be more melee focused. The last thing we need is a new melee class. The last thing we need more ranged classes. But no, I don't see it working in WoW because it is a support, it's a buff class, the Bard. And we don't have those. Really. Well, we don't. You know, classes are either DPS, healers, or tanks. I would be well up for support classes. You know, I think it would make it much more interesting. And I'd be more than happy if a Retribution Paladin was a support class. But, you know, it's not. So, no. Necromancy, Wizard, or Priest. Well, I would... Part of me keeps thinking maybe I would like to see like a Dark Ranger type class. The issue, I suppose, with it is we've now had this game out for so long where if it's got a bow, it's a hunter, that maybe you couldn't do that. But I see no reason not to have like a Dark Ranger class that has to obviously play very differently to a hunter. But, you know, that could be one option. There's no reason why we can't have another class, range class, that uses bows. Necromancers could be a thing, though. They could be a thing. Ooh, dear. Because they were a thing. I know they sort of merged with warlocks in World of Warcraft. But they were very much a thing in Warcraft. So you could actually have like a necromancer type class that did very little damage itself and was like a pet class on crack. In other words, it raised dead and had to direct those, and it was essentially a pets playing class. That would make it quite different. I don't know whether it would work. Like Sylvanas, yes. Thinking very much along the lines of Sylvanas. But at the moment you would call Sylvanas a hunter, wouldn't you? But if you gave them various little abilities, I can well imagine a class that just happens to have a bow working very, very differently to hunters. But there are plenty of things you could do to make new range classes. You just need a bit of imagination and the will to do it. Instead of keep coming, because every single new class we've had in this game, everyone has been a melee class without a ranged option as well. Without a ranged option. I mean, Alliance technically got, because in TBC we got Shamans, which, okay, had a ranged option, but they were already in the game, really. But, you know, Death Knights, Monks, Demon Hunters are all pure melee. Oh, yeah, from a lore perspective, definitely. As I say, they were in Warcraft. Necromancers were a thing in Warcraft. You know, we don't really have... I mean, Death Knights are not really quite... They're sort of similar, but they're melee-based. I mean, I actually first thought, when I heard about the Death Knight, I thought it was going to have a ranged DPS spec. Because I could imagine that working as ranged. Again, raising dead for pets, and actually casting your diseases from a distance, like a dot class, and also Death and Decay, actually placing it for AoE and stuff like that. I couldn't believe it when I got into beta and it wasn't like that. I really don't understand why Death Knights were just pure melee. There's no reason at all why they couldn't have done a melee spec, a tank spec, and a ranged DPS spec. In terms of support classes, who would want to play them? You would be surprised. There will be. I would quite like to play one. I'm all up for that. I'm always the sort of person who, like, is perfectly willing to stand back and do mechanics and stuff like that. Anyway, like, so I'd be more than happy to play a support class. That's what appealed to me in the first place with Paladins in like Dungeons and Dragons. What do I think of 4 specs per class? I think there should be fewer specs per class. I think different specs are what causes half the problems. I think, obviously they can't change it now because it's too far in. But if World of Warcraft was being designed now, I could go back in time and be in charge. I would be suggesting that you don't have more than one DPS spec for any class, unless it's going to be a ranged one and a melee one, like Druids and Shamans. But you just increase the amount of customization with talents. That's what I would do. Because I think specs what caused the trouble. Different specs. The problem, though, now is with Death Knights, is you get some people who really like playing Unholy, and some people who really like playing Frost. Whereas I think with Survival, I don't think any hunters were really... Oh, I'm a survival hunter. I don't think there was any big fuss about survival-leaning hunters now that they were going to be a melee class. I think you would get that though with DKs. You know, whichever side you chose to be, the range class. And Unholy would make the most sense. I think would not be happy. Yeah, well, this is the thing. There's all these things we're talking about here. They will never do. Because it's a change in a core part of the game. It's only the sort of thing that in theory might come in if they did a World of Warcraft 2. That would be a different game, and there you could then design it from scratch. Yeah, some people will have been main survival hunters, but what I mean is with hunters, before Legion, like, you played whatever was going to be best for you. Like, if you played survival at a time because, you know, that seemed best. If marksman suddenly became better, you just switched to marksman. Or BM or whatever. It's the same buttons you pressed anyway. So there wasn't that. I don't think there was as much attachment to particular specs. Apart from possibly BM for the purpose of soloing, because obviously, you know, that's easy. You have a nice tanky class. Great. Especially in the days when hunters, not so much now, but hunters used to have a minimum range on their things. You couldn't actually fire at point blank range. So you really needed as pet to do your tanking for you. Otherwise, it was a right mess. League of Legends, there is a champion called Severe. I don't know League of Legends. Not played it. A boomerang. We had a boomerang in WoW. We had Lincoln's boomerang. It was what I used as a paladin to pull. Because occasionally you could actually tank as a paladin, sort of. Not very well, but you could. But I had no means of pulling anything from ranged. Judgment wasn't brilliant because that would consume your seal. You have to then reseal. But Lincoln's Boomerang was an effective way of pulling. Well, rather they revamped Survival into Shadowhunter, potentially. But as I say, I see it as an opportunity for another class. What we need is another ranged or more ranged classes. The main reason, like, you have this disparity now at the moment where ranged players find it a lot easier to get into guilds than melee players. And that's a situation that's also going to bite in Tomb of Sargeras. I mean, we've got a lot of melee. Because in Nighthold, it didn't really hurt you. And it was a boon, actually, on Gul'dan. The only fight where it was a problem was Star Augur, that I can think of offhand. Obviously, I suppose you didn't want too much range on Croesus. You wanted a nice balance. But the only fight where you couldn't have a majority melee was really Star Augur. And even then, you could manage it as long as everyone behaved on Grand Conjunction. It just wasn't ideal. But, so ranged players, it's so easy to get into guild. You don't even have... You can be well below average for that guild and get in and be in the core raid team. Especially of certain classes. And the only way to... And the reason for that is because we've got so many melee classes and hardly any ranged classes. Which means that you can have multiples of a particular class. Like, if you look at... If, let's say, a Warlock applies to your guild and they look okay, and you're after a DPS, you can go, okay, well, they're not as good as the Warlock we've already got, but, you know, we can do with a second, that's no problem. Or even a third. Whereas if a Windwalker applies to your guild, you've already got one, you're probably not going to want a second. If a Ret applies to your guild and you've already got one, I mean, we've got a second now. But generally speaking, a lot of guilds probably not going to be bothered about another one. Same with Feral, same with a lot of melee. Some melee specs, you're okay with it, and a lot you're not. Like Rogues, you're okay with too, because obviously they can cheese mechanics. Warriors, similar sort of thing. Rogues probably have to stay as melee, really. But no, the Dark Ranger thing, because it wouldn't just be one spec as well. You know, the Dark Ranger can be basically your ninja from ranged. Your stealthy character from range. They could even have stealth. Obviously not fire from it, but they could actually have stealth. I suppose for PvP that might have, you know, consequences. Or I was even thinking they could have like a blink type ability, something like that. You know, like disappearing into the shadows and reappearing somewhere else with a little puff of black smoke or something. Like a ninja trick, you know, trucking down the smoke bomb over there. So there's, you know, I can see things like that working. I can see a necromancer working, but I just don't know why they don't do it. But at the same time, the problem is if they do that, you'd say, okay, well that increases the number of ranged class you've got, but it is going to still increase the total number of classes. And we have this problem in Mythic Raiding where you've got 20 spots. There's already 12 classes. And if you think about the total number of class role combinations, it's way over 12. It's mental. And if you add another class to it, even if it is a ranged class, it's just putting more and more pressure on that. Diablo 2 got ranged paladin spec. Well, Blizzard already used a lot of ideas from Diablo, didn't they, for Legion? In fact, I mean, what I quite liked in Diablo 3 was the Templar when they brought that in, because that's what made me play it again. Because I played it first of all, I played it as a monk, it was alright, but I wasn't that bothered by it. And then as soon as the Templar came, I looked at it and I thought, oh, I'm playing as that, and did and played it through. And of course, I'm going to do at some point the protection artifact appearance quest, because I want that sort of Morningstar flail type transmog. That looks nice. I'm not sure a knife thrower would be all that impressive, because it would be like the rogue with a shuriken toss, wouldn't it? It's a bit doing that constantly. It would do your head in for a start. I don't think it's very impressive. Necromancer would be a good start with it, I think. I mean, you'd have to have more than one spec the way it worked. Again, this is my issue with having multiple specs for the same role in WoW. I'm not a fan of that. But it's in now. You can't change it. If they did add necromancy in WoW, people would cry more Diablo and Threat in Warcraft. Would we care? I think they brushed off any such criticism about, you know, they've already brought in so much from Diablo anyway. I don't think there's been a massive backlash on anything. There's been some people moaning about it. Isn't Necromancer just a demo lot? Well, Warlocks are already used to having to give up some of their abilities, because you could argue, isn't a Demon Hunter just a demo lock? So they nicked it. Your metamorphosis, all the rest of it went gone. Well, that is the thing. You are right. Like, the Warlock in World of Warcraft was an amalgamation of actual Warlocks and the Necromancer from Warcraft, the actual RTS. So you'd just be separating it back out again. But you could easily make a Necromancer class that plays very, very differently to a Warlock class. Because the thing is, your Necromancer class, like the Warlock still predominantly does lots of casting. Even Demo Warlock still is casting. Whereas you could have a Necromancer that doesn't cast very often, maybe just to apply debuffs or something. But maybe it could be, they could be like more like a healer in terms of the way they play, but they're buffing their pets. And it's the pets that are doing the damage. They're directing their pets and buffing their pets, and like you have that sort of situation going on. They could work like that. That would make a very different, whether it's a fun playstyle, I don't know. But you could make it very, very different. Some people on Reddit suggested Tinker. Ah, well, you could certainly do with a new mail-wearing class, couldn't we? In fact, we're so desperate for that. Even Blizzard did say they talked about, they very quickly decided it was a non-starter, and I agree with them. But they even talked about whether they could make Demon Hunters a mail-wearing class, because it is now a clear disparity. You've got 3 plate. You've now got, what, 5 leather DPS? Rogues, Monks, Demon Hunters, Druids. Or maybe it's 4. And then you've got your 3 cloth classes. Yeah, Demo Lock is cast into buff pets. But again, you could... I mean, you could just remove demo locks, frankly. If it would be easy to do that, I don't care, as long as there's another range class. Male wearing Tide Hunters. The thing is, if they brought something out that was like, if they brought another bow wearing class out, it couldn't be a male wearing one. Because otherwise, it's already, I think, would be difficult to bring out a bow using class without people saying, well, it's just like another spec of a hunter. You'd have to make it play very, very differently for at least 2 specs. I mean, they've now with Demon Hunters, because that just has 2 specs, you've opened up the possibility you can bring out a class that has just 2 specs. So you would have to say, okay, but it would have to be a leather wearing one or whatever. But yeah, it would be good if they could think of a male wearing ranged class. But it wouldn't, you couldn't really have it as a bow user, because then people would just say, well, you've just come up with another type of hunter spec, haven't you? And called it a different class. That's the difficulty with that one. So they have painted themselves into a corner, really. Will we be able to get the new legendaries tomorrow? Yes. Yes, it is worth saving caches. People in North America have already started to get new legendaries from the old caches. So Blizzard, even though Blizzard said you won't be able to do that, they were wrong. I don't think they were lying, like someone suggested. I think they were just wrong. But they are wrong, because people have done it. And people have even filmed themselves opening up loads of caches and getting a new legendary. I don't think adding a new type of armor will help. Because what they've tried to do ever since Vanilla came out is to reduce the size of loot tables, because as it is, it can sometimes take you a long time to see particular pieces of loot. But yes, if you've got any caches now, do save them till the reset. But as I say, some of these things they're just not going to do. But it does baffle me why they bring out so many melee classes, whilst at the same time having raids in general being melee hating. You know, they either have to decide that they've got to make all boss encounters melee proof, or and by that I mean that if you've got twice as many melee as ranged, because there's twice as many bloody melee classes as ranged, then you know that's what you can sensibly go with. Because it's going to be struck. In fact, there's going to be one fight in Tomb of Sargeras I'm not even going to be on. I've forgotten which one it is now. One of them's really melee hating on Mythic, and I've forgotten now. It's either the Maiden one or the Inquisitor one. I forget now. Again, they're all getting mixed up in my head because I haven't actually done them on the PTR. Melee having nice visuals is all very well until you get like 10 of them all on the same spot. The visuals don't look so good then. But the irony is, I think one of the big problems melee have is they come up with mechanics to prevent us stacking because that makes healing too easy. But then those same mechanics also tend to want you to not have lots of melee. Pets, yeah, pets in melee. I don't mind it so much these days. I used to hate it when hunters had flappy pets. That was back in the day when specific pets had specific abilities. Now there's a little bit of that now because you need specific types of pets to, for example, give you heroism or hysteria, whatever it's called, and battle res. But which I think actually is a flappy pet. But I used to hate it when they had owls and stuff because that would be in your face, and I could do without it. DK Gargoyle. I don't notice that so much. How do I think the Time Walking Black Temple will turn out? I think people will be disappointed when it ends because you're only going to get a week with it. I think people will like it and be disappointed when it's gone after a week. Because you know, I haven't actually looked on the calendar when the next Burning Crusade one is coming out, because the next Time Walking is going to be a mop one, so we're not going to get the Time Walking BT for a bit. It's when the Burning Crusade Time Walking comes out. But I didn't actually get to try that on the PTR. Again, one of those things where I didn't realise when they said, oh, we're testing the BT, I thought, oh, I'll have a go at that this weekend, see if I can get into a group. And then it wasn't there at the weekend. They only put it on for a few days, which is annoying. So I'll have to make more of an effort. I'll have to remember this time round when 7.3 patch comes out that when they say they're testing something today, they might actually just mean today. So I'll have to go in for an hour or something if I can find the time and actually try it out and get some footage this time round and do a better job of some future gazing on the PTR. But I'm gonna have to make sure I've got my fan going as well for that. I've just read today we're going to get a very long hot summer in the UK, which is incredibly annoying. Do I think we're due another world change? I think they probably regret the first one. It's a lot of effort to put into it. I'm fine, thank you. There's a lot of effort into remapping. Like, if they're going to do anything with the old zones, I think they should spend their time putting scaling in them so that you can level up on any zones you want. Not necessarily the latest levels. What legendary would I upgrade first? It's a very good question. It may depend if I get a new legendary or not. I would probably upgrade the cloak though. It also all depends on how quickly you can do them. Server shutdown. But yeah, it is a tricky one which order to do your legendaries, especially if there's going to be a choice. If you get a new legendary this reset, it won't be 970, it'll be 940. It only becomes 970 once Tomb of Sargeras releases the following reset for reasons. So yeah, if you get a new legendary tomorrow, it's going to be 940. Whether it's a new legendary or an old legendary, but a different, if you get a legendary tomorrow, it's going to be 940. That's unfortunately the way it works. They don't let you have the higher level stuff until the raid has come out. Well, I don't know. You could choose. You could choose to wait until the following week if you wanted. Do I think they'll make any effort to address the lore discontinuity in leveling since you start cutting? There was no reason for them to put that discontinuity in the first place. It's very jarring. So, again, it's a lot of work. They'd have to completely do different quests. So I don't think... I think they regret... I think they regret doing it for Cataclysm, if I'm honest. And I don't think, with the new model of making sure there's loads and loads of content to do in expansions, that they would consider it a good idea to go back and revisit the 1 to 60 content. The best they may do, depending on how straightforward it is to do this, and I don't know, is, as I say, to do level scaling. They won't go back to the way it was, even though I wish they would, because they, although I think they regret doing it for a certain way, I think they like the fact that zones, which is very boring in my view, have this model of go to a place, pick up a load of quests, do those quests, go to a new hub, pick up a load of quests, do those quests, go to a new hub, and so on. And you're just moving around a zone to hub, from hub to hub. And it didn't used to be like that in vanilla. And then they made it like that. And I still think they like that model. So I think the developers prefer the new 1 to 60 zones compared to the previous one. So I don't think they'll ever revert it. Yeah, you go back. Well, this is the thing that baffled me when they redid the 1 to 60 zones. I would have thought it would have been better to have kept them the way they were, and then the redone ones they have for Cataclysm, like when you hit level 80, 85, whatever. And then the chronology would still make sense, and you'd have a load of zones with a load of new quests. You could have just had those as the quests to do in Cataclysm. So that's exactly what I would have thought. I've not minded the questing in any expansion, really. Like, it was alright in Wrath, and it was alright in TBC. It was alright in every expansion as such. Sort of. But what I liked about the vanilla one, and you can't do this for an expansion because you get loads of levels in vanilla, is I liked the fact that some crazy elf in Stormwind told me to go and get some wyvern eggs or something from Thousand Needles, which meant without a horse, without a mount, trekking all the way across to Kalimdor through several zones where you had mobs at the side of the road with a skull where their level should be, which meant they were basically at least 10 levels higher than you, so you were a dead end if they caught you. And going through all these zones and having to get past horde areas as well, so getting PvP flagged just because I ran past a horde NPC. I quite liked all that exploration that went on, because I went to zones I would never have gone to as an Alliance player, just to go and pick up these stupid eggs that were worth no experience. It was a totally inefficient way to level, but I didn't care about that. Now, that sort of exploration you can't do in expansion because you've only got a few zones, new zones. Well, yeah, as you say, in WoW we've got flying, so... but there could still be interesting little events. There are sort of some if you know where to look, but not that many. Well, yeah, this is the thing, game. Obviously, I mean, in an MMO, the leveling experience I suppose it's different in Elder Scrolls Online. But by and large, the leveling experience is an advanced tutorial. It's teaching you how to play the game, giving you abilities a bit at a time, so you can get used to them and then learn with the new abilities and so on. So it's an advanced tutorial. Which actually reminds me, when they first brought in character boosts, I remember, because that's when Law had just joined Blizzard as a developer, not developer, sorry, community manager. And he did these like tutorial videos for beginners on how to play the different specs that you could level boost to, which I thought were a good idea. They don't seem to have updated those. The new quest will take all Legion legendaries to item 970. Yeah. Oh, you mean all of them in one go? That's not right, surely. Are you sure it doesn't mean that if you have some 910s that it will put them straight to 970? That surely doesn't mean it's going to upgrade all of your legendaries in one go. That doesn't make any... Nah, I'm not sure about that. I think they just mean that even if you've got an old 910 one that you never bothered to upgrade, that it would be working. Yeah, I don't think it would mean that. Because they did say that there were two things that were wrong with the original quest. Yeah, I think that's what it means. Because they did say with the quest we got to upgrade from 910 to 940, the Distilled Titan Essence, there were two problems with it. One was that you had to have the quest to get the bits that you needed to collect. Well, that's a bit of a problem if you've just completed one and now you're carrying on killing bosses and you can't collect the new ones because you haven't turned the quest in yet. But then, yeah. So now you can get the bits even if you don't have the quest. But secondly, even after you'd upgraded all your legendaries, you can still carry on getting the quest, which is a bit confusing. So they said they were going to remove that so that the quest will no longer show if you've got all your legendaries upgraded. So it wouldn't make sense to say that if you only needed to do the quest once. Well, on the issue of flying, yeah, I mean, I have my views on it, but at the same time, if I were in charge of Blizzard, I would not try and remove it from the game because it is a core part of the game now. The opportunity to remove it was TBC. They could have had it in TBC. If they had never brought it in Wrath, no one would have batted an eyelid, you know, because people would have gone, okay, it made sense in TBC. We don't now need it. It's fine. But that's not what happened. They brought it in every expansion since. So when they tried to get rid of it completely in WoD, well, you had to be a bit dim to think that you were going to get away with that. There was no way that they were going to get away with that at all. So, yeah, we should... Well, I wish they'd have just kept it in for TBC and left it at that. But they haven't, so there's no point in complaining. If I was in charge of WoW, I don't know. They always seem a bit fruitless to me, those ones, because I'm not. It's a bit like, you know, spending time thinking about what you would do if you won 80 million quid on the lottery. It's just like a waste of time because you're not... Because if it happens, you can think about it then. I don't expect Mike Morheim to give me a call and ask me to run World of Warcraft. So, you know, it would just be one of those things where it would just be a fruitless endeavour, I think. I mean, I'd be much more interested in thinking about if I were to be given like hundreds of millions of pounds and asked to design an MMO, like an actual new MMO, the sort of things out, you know, based on other MMOs and where I think they could be improved and stuff like that, and make a whole new MMO. That would be much more interesting. But also a fairly extensive project. But it might actually be worth it. You just give me food for thought now. It may actually be worth, with the emissary caches, because I've only got a couple saved up anyway, maybe not actually using them tomorrow. Maybe waiting another week. Because if there is a legendary in them, then I don't know at what point it's determined. Obviously, it's not when you get the cash, because we know that old ones can give you new legendaries. So it must be at the point you open them. But it would be, might be worth keeping hold of them until the reset when they would be 970 if they're in there at all. What do I think WoW can borrow from other fantasy universes, gameplay and story-wise? Transmog and player housing, top of the list. There's certain things that, as I say, I would like to see, but they won't because it's just a core part of the game. I don't like everything stealing. There's lots of things in WoW that have been stolen from other games. It's fine. Like if you look at the moment, like let's say you get some quests now and you open up your map and you see numbers on your map that are linked to the quests. You can see whereabouts you need to go for particular quests. That didn't used to be in the game. That was in other MMOs. In fact, that was in Warhammer Online before it was ever in WoW. And I bet Warhammer Online wasn't the first MMO to do that. I am a supporter of subscription fees. I think it should keep the subscription fee. I just think that the subscription, like if you look at other MMOs which are sort of technically free to play, but you always benefit from a subscription. So like Star Wars, The Old Republic, Lord of the Rings Online, Elder Scrolls Online, those sort of things. So you can choose to have a subscription and you get certain benefits for that, which I think are worthwhile. But you also get with it some currency for the online store. So I think the same should apply on World of Warcraft. I think you should get a certain amount of credit for things. And after an amount of time you could turn it in for a realm transfer or a faction change or a name change or something like that. And I think that should just come with the subscription. Because they put time-gated content in specifically to keep us up with the subscription so that we don't just subscribe for a patch, play it for a month and then bugger off. So that would surely help if we got a tangible benefit to retaining the subscription. Then that would be good. What do I think if Blizzard do StarCraft, Warcraft movies and then do animated kids move for Overwatch in the next 10 years? I think they would be... Well, they wouldn't do it, obviously. They'd need a production company to do that. That's why, obviously, they needed like Legendary Pictures to do the film. I think they would be more than delighted if someone came along with a workable way of doing a kids' animated show on anything, including Overwatch or whatever it happened to be. I think they'd be delighted because it's free advertising. So I don't think they'd have any objection to that. Obviously, they would retain editorial control over the project. But, yeah, they'd love it if someone came up to them and said, we want to commission this series on this franchise of yours. Because why not? Because as long as it's done well, it's good publicity for them. Effectively free publicity. Because they'd even pay them for doing it. It's like someone coming to you and offering to advertise your product for you. That's how sports sponsorship works. You know, you've got your sports team advertises whatever it happens to be, like a particular type brand of car, and then you pay 40 quid for a football shirt with that sponsor's name on it. So you're paying to basically sponsor that company. The same sort of thing here. People would be coming to them, offering to pay them so that they can advertise their product. I know I would jump at the chance if I was a CEO. In fact, I'd be actively letting it be known to production companies that would be well up for it. But I've never really got into StarCraft, so I don't know. The problem with StarCraft, it would seem to me, if they did a film of it, again, I think where Warcraft lost out in North America, because everywhere else it did pretty well, and obviously very well in Asia, but I think where it lost out in North America is people couldn't help, the non-World of Warcraft players, couldn't help but see it as a pale imitation of Lord of the Rings because of the orcs thing. Like, if orcs weren't in it, if they'd have just done the story, say, of Arthur, say, I'm not saying they should have done, but if they did, I think it would have done a lot better in North America. Because all modern fantasies have got some sort of link to Tolkien's work. They're all inspired by it in some way. But the orcs thing just I think for a lot of people just saw it as like Lord of the Rings ripoff. And I think StarCraft would be seen as like an Aliens ripoff if they were to do it, or you know, some of these other sci-fi franchises. So I think that would run into trouble. So let's have a look. One thing I really don't like is how they got rid of older raids to bring in updated raids. No, I don't. I especially don't like the way they got rid of older dungeons. Like Scholarmance was my favourite dungeon. Also, like I still have the Brazier of Invocation to summon the Paladin Epic Mount Quest boss, the Dark Knight thing, in the bottom of Scholarmance in the Ossuary. We can't even get there now. It doesn't exist. I also have the Brazier to summon the things for the dungeon upgrade quest, which still works in the untouched zone, so I can still get that to work in Diamol. Where else? And Blackrock Depths, because those dungeons have been left alone. But it doesn't work in Scholarmance anymore, because that hasn't been left alone. It doesn't work in Upper Blackrock Spire anymore, because that's been changed, which I'm not happy about. Although one good thing, because the boss in Upper Blackrock Spire dropped a very nice staff, actually, which I have. I got it on my priest, so now I have it as transmog for all my casters, so that's quite good. A unique staff. Well, you say that there's only so many ideas to juggle around. The way I look at it with fantasy stuff, especially fantasy games, if you're making a new fantasy game, usually the companies that do this start off very small. So Dungeons and Dragons started off like basically out of someone's garage. Blizzard started off as a really small company. So you're making this game. Obviously, you have to focus on making sure that the gameplay is good. So you effectively borrow large chunks of it. You don't spend a lot of time on the story, I think. You know, so you effectively borrow. So Dungeons and Dragons, although it's got lots of its own unique lore as time has gone on, borrowed heavily from Tolkien because it was familiar. You essentially want people to play your game. You want fantasy fans to play your game, so you have something familiar. So a lot of Tolkien stuff in it as well. And World of Warcraft, same sort. I think, and then because Dungeons and Dragons got so big, I think other fantasy genres after that have borrowed heavily from both Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons. So that includes like Warhammer and Warcraft and various other ones as well. So it is inevitable. I don't necessarily think it's because there's only so many ideas to juggle around. There arguably are. I mean, I think some authors suggest, like scholars, that there's only like something like 7 types of fiction. There's like 7 types of storyline. I don't remember, something like that anyway. I'm not a literist. But yeah, I think the bigger thing is that when you're starting off as a small company to make a game, you focus on making the game, and so the storyline and the world and the races in it and stuff like that, you sort of borrow heavily, rather than because you haven't really got the resources to start it all from scratch yourself. Do hope they release a time walking event to do pre-Cata dungeons. Well, they have, but I think. Do you mean vanilla dungeons? Oh, you mean the vanilla? Well, I hope. I hope they do vanilla ones. I talked about vanilla ones about 6 or 7 weeks ago, in terms of the ones that I think it could work with. Because Blizzard, when they were asked about it, they said they're not opposed to doing a vanilla time walking. They just didn't think that there were enough dungeons, because they need like 5 or 6 dungeons. They didn't think there were enough dungeons where you could do it with. I think there are. They would struggle more if they were to do the original versions of those vanilla dungeons, though. Like you could do a Sunken Temple as it is now, easy for time walking. You probably wouldn't do a Sunken Temple as it was then, with the 3 levels. But there's plenty that you could do. You could do Dead Mines. There's no reason not to do Dead Mines. Either pre or post Cata. You could do Shadowfang Keep without any real difficulty. Razorfen Crawl as it is now you could do. Maybe not then, because you could get lost. Razorfen Downs potentially you could do as well. Maybe that's a little long. Stockade you could easily do. And as it is now again. Stockades as it was before Cata obviously had no real bosses in it. It didn't drop loot at any rate. I wasn't there for the Kata pre-launch event. I had stopped playing at that point and didn't come back till Dragon Soul. But anyway, we've sort of come to that 2-hour mark, so I'll give it another few minutes. People have got things to talk about, and then we'll sort of wind it down a little bit, I think. A full-time walking clear of the old Blackrock dungeons. They'd have to do that as a raid type thing, wouldn't they? Obviously still 5-man, but as if you were doing it as a raid thing with epic type gear maybe. But people even then didn't really do full clears very often because there was no need to. You wanted to do specific, you went in there for specific things. You maybe went in there for the fire resistance bracers where you could just go to that boss quite quickly. Sometimes you went for the materials from the Black Vault thing, whatever it was called, the Dark Coffer for your enchants on legs and helm, the Libra. What else did you go there for? Well, Paladins wanted to go there for the last boss because it dropped our tier gloves, like dungeon tier gloves. But unfortunately, you needed a mage for it, and mages didn't really weren't that asked about it. In my opinion, what order of expansion that I've played? Well, I've played all of them, just not. I haven't played Wrath or Kata fully. I played a tier in each of them. Would you rate Ret from best to worst? But that is a good point because I can't really rate Kata or Wrath because I didn't play Ret throughout either of them. I don't know. I would probably have to say Legion best just because why not? It sort of works. I miss Hammer of Wrath. I wish they hadn't got rid of that. But the spec sort of works. Worse was TBC without a shadow of a doubt because they kept monkeying about with it. And what that monkeying about... Basically what happened is someone would perceive some imbalance in in PvP, so we'd get nerfed. So Crusader Strike came into the game. And Crusader Strike wasn't just like an ability to do damage. It could also refresh judgments, not just your judgments either, because judgments put debuffs on mobs then. And there were different types of judgment. So you would encourage other paladins to put their judgment on them, and you could use Crusader Strike to keep them up. But it had a 6... Let me get this right. It was either a 6 or an 8 second cooldown. I think it was a 6 second cooldown. Okay. And it was judged to be doing too much damage. In PvP, not PvE. So then they just nerfed it to 10 seconds. Now the problem with 10 seconds is judgments lasted 20 seconds. So if you missed, and remember miss was a thing then because you had hit rating, but it was not easy to get up to the hit cap at the start of TBC. So if you missed, so someone puts a judgment on, you're waiting a few seconds before Crusader Strike's ready. Then you do that and you've missed. And if you miss again 10 seconds later, then the judgments will fall off. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you miss twice in a row, then you've lost your... Or parry, but you again, you know, even then you knew to stand behind things if you could. If you know, so you shouldn't get parried at least. But it could be dodged was a thing. But yeah, if for whatever reason you couldn't get the hit on it twice in a row, which was not that unusual, then they would fade off. Plus the fact, as I say, the reason it was nerfed is not because we were doing too much damage in PvE. It was perceived as being too powerful in PvP. And potentially it was. I mean, I used to remember doing a lot of damage in Battlegrounds with it when we got the pre-expansion patch. But my view at the time was, why are Blizzard nerfing it based on people complaining about us using TBC stuff when we're still level 60 in vanilla? Like, or we didn't call it vanilla then, but you know, in World of Warcraft. But so, you know, and then they kept... So then what would happen is they'd see we're really weak, and eventually, a long time after, they might buff something, and then, well, lo and behold, it'd be too powerful in PvP again, so it would go back down again. What was the actual reason they removed Spirit? Because it was just too much of a pain in the arse, I think. There were too many, like, secondary... There was, I mean, it was a weird mix between primary and secondary stat. They just decided it was too much of a pain in the arse. Have I got any plans for the channel over the summer break? Yes. Doing more stuff. I should be able to do more PTR stuff, at least. So that should be more useful. But yeah, just in... basically, I had a plan. I've forgotten what it was now. Ultimately, the aim of summer, because summer is the time when I get to behave almost like a full-time YouTuber. Not quite. I can't actually live like a full... Even though in theory I could, in practice it wouldn't be a good idea. So that's the time where, just like last summer, I will be trying to look at ways to actively grow the channel, like give it a big old spurt. Because, like at the moment, growth is quite slow. In fact, it's very slow. And it's difficult to know what to do about that other than just do the content I'm doing. Whereas in when I get my summer break, which is not yet, another month. Oh, it's not far away. Then I get more time then. Are we going to get a buff in Tomb, do you think? Yes. The thing is, though, I wouldn't look too much at this, wherever it was. I can't remember now. Forget it. That chart that has us at the bottom. Because, like I said in that video about not looking at comparison charts, some of those classes have been done by people who haven't quite got their modules working yet. So they're not necessarily 100% accurate. That being said, there have been reports from sensible people as well. I don't mean people who just, you know, if they don't come top of the meters go, my class is broken. But before these charts were being done, I was getting reports from rets in good guilds who were doing PTR testing saying that their damage was looking poor. And given that, unlike Nighthold, Tomb of Sargeras is not as friendly for melee, it is a worry. I can't deny it's a worry. But the thing is, I've been playing Retribution Paladin for so many years, in so many expansions, that it happens all the time. It's a bit like if you live in a country that gets invaded every 10 years, eventually you just get used to the fact you're always being invaded. And it's the same thing playing as a Retribution Paladin. Eventually you just sort of let it wash over. You just decide to yourself, well, do you know what? I've always managed to raid every tier. I've finished most tiers off, except when I've just returned or you know. And I'll struggle through somehow. I will probably have to expect, like in this tier, for example, I was in on progress for every kill. So I was there for every kill. I will have to accept that in Tomb of Sargeras that is unlikely to be the case. So it will not be a good tier. But we'll just get through it and hope that the following one is better. But equally they could buff it. But even if they do, the issue is it's not so much where rets are, it's where melee are, and melee are not looking clever for it. And we have no utility. That's the issue with rets. Like rogues bring useful things, warriors bring useful things. Windwalker monks sometimes, although we don't have one of those. Demon hunters bring useful things. We don't really, unless Bop happens to be useful every now and then. Like usually about once every year it becomes useful. They have indeed as stated rebalancing in the next couple of weeks. Absolutely. I absolutely don't. Whatever state we are in, and remember those charts do not necessarily give you an accurate picture, is not going to be the same as in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time. Have I had a chance to try any other play specs? Not. I wouldn't necessarily notice the difference. I don't really play Protection or Holy. Occasionally I wander onto it just for whatever reason, but I don't practice them. It is a regret of mine, possibly for the next expansion. Maybe I should, if I get into like early access alpha beta again, maybe I will make more of a conscious effort to test out the other specs as well. But at the moment it's not really worth, because I'd have to practice them properly. And I'm not sure it's really worth my effort, especially with them being so dependent on legendaries. Well, I don't know how dependent, but I don't have them anyway. What TOS bosses look the most interesting? I keep forgetting that. Obviously, Kill Jaden is clearly going to be the most interesting. But if you say aside from that, they get mixed up in my head. That's the problem. I've looked at the videos of them. I need my notes in front of me. I've written some notes on them. That's what I will have in front of me when we're actually doing them in a week's time. Because, as I say, the abilities and the bosses all keep getting run together in my head. I will be disappointed with the Naga boss because I think we have to kill Murlocs for that. I never appreciate killing Murlocs. The last time we had to kill Murlocs on a raid boss was in Serpent Shrine Cavern, I think, if I remember rightly. I didn't like that either. What is it about Palace that first attracted you to in general, not in WoW? Well, it wasn't in WoW. It was years before in Dungeons & Dragons. The thing that appealed to me, it was probably the thing that appeals to most people who want to play Paladin, is that it seems to be a bit of everything. When I was playing Dungeons & Dragons, I first of all played a wizard with this group, well, relatives really, a cousin and some of his friends. And the standard 4-man group, and there were 5 of us, so it works out pretty well, Dungeon Master and 4 players, was a fighter, a cleric, a thief, and a wizard. Because that covered all bases, and they were all really good at what they did. But my issue was I was playing a wizard, and I thought, well, really good at this, but not actually very good at that. And I wasn't keen on that. So what attracted me to Paladins was they were actually sort of okay at various things, like the jack of all trades. And that was what appealed to me. Plus the fact that they were self-righteous and could be pains in the arse as well. Was also good. Drakthur Keep. What about Drakthur Keep? What have I missed? Murlocs into gnomes. Oh yeah, I'd have no problem killing them if there were gnomes. But anyway, I think what we'll do, we'll call it to a close there. It's just over 2 hours. I will put this on YouTube later, but I'll say I'm going to finish off the other video first. Put some graphics on it, get that out first, because this always takes ages anyway. It'll take quite a long time to render, and then I'll have to leave it after I go to bed to actually upload. So it'll appear probably sometime in the next 10 hours. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I'll see you later.